This time, Yeovil Town, the giant killers make it to the big time.
No, nay, never. No, nay, never, no more. 'Cause I'll stay a wild rover forever and more.
Hello and welcome to By Far the Greatest Team, a podcast in which football fans attempt the impossible to rank once and for all who is the greatest team of all time. My name is Dunn, as ever, making the case for Oxford United where it doesn't belong. And joining us in our data corner, it's Jamie Rooney.
Graham, hello. Do you know what's great about what we're just about to explore with this amazing Yeovil Town team? It's given me the opportunity to revisit the re-election process that the Football League had in play for so many years. And we're literally dealing with a top trump tonight when it comes to Yeovil Town. They are an absolute card you want to have in your deck if you want to win top trumps.
Definitely so. And I'm delighted to joining us on this from the Gloverscast podcast. It's David Coates.
Hello, gentlemen. Nice to be invited along to talk about Yeovil Town's glory days. Always something it's a pleasure to do.
Absolutely, and an incredible period. Now, whilst growing up in Yeovil, you're not based in Yeovil now, are you?
No. I'm actually based in a place called Lytham St Anne's, just slightly outside of Blackpool, which is pretty much as far away from Yeovil as you're going to get. So, and I've lived here since 2001. So 24 years, lots of miles on the motorway and lots of rail tickets. So, and whenever anyone asks me, how much do you spend following watching you? I don't want to add it up. It would be too terrifying.
It's a frightening prospect, isn't it? But plenty of teams up in the north there to go and watch while you're at it.
There is now, yeah. Last season in regional football, when you don't live in that region, that's not so good.
Oh, of course, that occurred to me. Of course, yeah, you'd been in the southern half, wouldn't you?
Yeah, National League South. So when you live in the northwest of England, National League South is not good for your mileage, let's say that.
What a nightmare. So this Yeovil Town story, and I'm actually fascinated because this is actually a really sort of glorious period of success for the club. But before this time, Yeovil Town would have been more famous, I guess, and I mentioned it in the opening there, as these non-league giant killers. That was kind of what, if anyone knew anything about Yeovil Town, it was because of their FA Cup exploits, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I can say up until about, the season we're going to talk about in 2013-14 in the Championship, everybody who I met, I told I was a Yeovil fan, said, they did all right in the FA Cup one year, didn't they? And now I meet people and they go, why do you win the Championship for a season? So that, you're absolutely right. That's what everyone remembers. I mean, still the record holders for the non-league team with the most league scalps, giant killings out of the FA Cup. We're on 21 now. So, so it still is. I mean, the FA Cup, we haven't had a great record in it in the past couple of seasons, but it's still something that whenever it comes around, there's a special buzz about the place. And no more replays, but we live with the memories, and that's what football's all about, isn't it?
Can I just add, 21 giant killers, I didn't realise it was that much. Because one of the questions I had for you, David, and you already answered it, thank you so much, was why Yeovil Town have this reputation for being giant killers in the FA Cup. And I think 21 giant killings is absolutely the reason why. But I think this goes back to the late 1940s as well. But another thing I know about Yeovil Town, without knowing too much about beyond the FA Cup giant killing, is a slopey pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you'd be hard pressed to find that in Yeovil now because there's a Tesco on top of it. No, you can't put a trolley at one end of the car park and it will roll down to the other. They've levelled it out, I'm afraid. But you're right. Yeah, the old Hewitt ground, which you mentioned there, 1949, which was when Yeovil probably still our most famous giant killing. We knocked Sunderland out of the FA Cup, and they were known at that time as the Bank of England team because they were literally put together from superstars. And we had a manager at the time, a guy called Alex Stock, there's a lounge named after him at the new stadium now, and he's still a legend. I think Fulham, QPR, he managed a few much bigger teams than Yeovil, but he was player manager that day. He scored in that game, and you listen to some of the grainy black and white footage of him, and he played on the psychology. He was Alex Ferguson before Alex Ferguson was. He played on about the slope, and I think I'm right in saying it's about 8 feet from side to side on the pitch. Now, on the podcast, we do a monthly edition called podcast called the Gloverscast. We do an episode called the Glover's Past, which is talking to former players, and we've spoken to a few who played on it, and they will tell you that it was like going up a mountain. So yeah, it was. I think some of it was psychology, but the sloping pitch is another thing people remember us for.
We're going to talk quite a lot about Gary Johnson and Gary Johnson's era at the club, but looking through some of the managers that had previously been at Yeovil, there's some incredible names, and I'll talk about the particular interest in his two predecessors. But I did notice that Malcolm Allison was very, very briefly in charge of Yeovil. What was happening here?
That's right. I mean, that's a bit before my time, despite the grey hairs, to remember Malcolm Allison. But you're right, and a lot of players sort of in that era as well, who people would have known. Alan Pardew played for Yeovil before he went to Crystal Palace. Guy Whittingham as well.
Oh wow!
He played. He was a prolific scorer because Yeovil was army. There was an army camp there, and Guy Whittingham was in the army, and he scored some ridiculous number of goals one season. And there was this, the club buy him out of his contract with the army. They didn't. Portsmouth did. He went to Portsmouth. He became corporal punishment there, didn't he? But but yeah, there's some great names when you go back. And I always bore everyone when I'm watching a Premier League game and you see someone come on, oh, we had him on loan. We used to play for him. I mean, the number of players that have played for Yeovil down the years who've gone on to do well, and we'll talk a few of them tonight. Yeah, it's unbelievable, really.
You had Ron Saunders, player manager there.
His first job, I think.
His first job? Before obviously being tempted to the mighty Oxford.
That's the first Oxford reference I've heard about these, Graham. I've heard about these. Don't worry, I've thought of a few Oxford connections. So some you might be happy with, some you might not. Yeah,
David, if you could do me a favour, can all your Oxford United references be putting down on Oxford United just to make Graham feel
well, I've got at least one
terrible.
of those, but I'll save that one.
Thank you so much. As the best ones are the ones that make Graham feel awful. So please bring them out.
Oh, I've definitely got one of those. But
but we were doing QPR 1975 a couple of podcasts ago, and we were talking quite a lot about David Webb, who was playing for QPR by then. And of course, David Webb has a sort of recurring role at Yeovil, isn't he? So he's manager in early 2000s, something like that.
Yeah, so he was sort of all but one from Gary Johnson, 2003. So yeah, he came in towards the end of a season when we probably had a squad which we come out of regional football. So that's kind of where my proper following Yeovil began, which was like, well, you're in that 16, 17-year-old. And you've got the time to be able to go and do these things, haven't you? So we went out of regional football into the conference as it was then. Did all right, never really pulled up too many trees, and a couple of good FA Cup runs in there as well. But David Webb came in at a time where the club was transitioning from part-time to full-time football. And we were actually bankrolled at the time by a local businessman, a guy called John Goddard Watts, who founded Screwfix Direct, which anyone who's done a bit of DIY or is a tradesman will know Screwfix Direct. So that was actually founded in Yeovil. Although he had no interest in football at all, John Goddard wanted to do something good for the town and the community. So he basically financed that transition, which at the time, people don't really think about part-time teams now, because there's so much full-time teams even in the non-league. But at that time, most teams were part-time. Therefore, stepping into the full-time, that's what you needed to do. So David Webb came in around that time and basically got rid of practically everyone and gave a load of kids the opportunity, and a couple of those kids have gone on to do all right. So Chris Wheel, goalkeeper, went on to play for Bristol City, I think maybe Derby, Leicester as well. A fullback called Anthony Tonkin, Graham, you remember him?
Oh, I remember Anthony Tonkin.
Reference, yeah. So he came up through the youth team, and a couple of others you probably wouldn't be household names, but So David Webb built a team which was a really young, exciting, youthful team, which I was actually working for the local paper at the time when David Webb came in. And one thing I'd say is he was not a man to be trifled with. Honestly, he was. If he told you something, you didn't ask another question. That was it. We've done interviews on the podcast with players who played with him, and one of them told us a story about they threatened to hang him from a floodlight at half time because he didn't do something you asked him to. And he's the kind of man you would believe he'd do it as well. So,
Wow.
yeah, but David Webb was there for a short time. Then he went to back to Southend United where he'd been previously, and then we had Colin Addison.
Addison.
As a manager who'd been around a bit as well. So he came in, unfortunately didn't get us to the promised land of the Football League. Rusty and Diamonds pipped us to the post that season. But then after him, some bloke called Gary Johnson, who's been manager of the Latvian national team, wandered in. And everyone was like, who the hell's he?
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to a couple of the Gloverscast podcast, and that the one where you talk about Gary Johnson coming in and the legacy he leaves, David. And I liked the conversation because you're naming potential coaches that could be coming in during the summer. And I think there was some kind of rogue story about Steve McMahon coming in as well. But they're recognised names in the football world. And then you get this guy, Gary Johnson, who, as David said, no one really knows anything about. You know, he set up a holiday business in Scandinavia. He's done a little bit of coaching in the lower leagues with Cambridge United, Graham, as well, which links in because we did John Beck's Cambridge United, the team that came very close to becoming a founding member of the Premier League. And Gary Johnson was Beck's right-hand man. And sorry, David, just to indulge Graham a little bit, we talked about Steve Claridge. He was part of that Cambridge team and he hated the ice baths that John Beck was forcing him to do as this kind of new way of recovery, and he absolutely hated them. Apparently, having spoken to my friend who's a Bristol City fan, that idea comes from Gary Johnson, which kind of gives us an insight into his forward-thinking methods, which we can go on and talk about more. But if Gary Johnson is already thinking ice baths in the mid-1990s before they are becoming a trend in the last 12 months. He is a man that's clearly ahead of his time. But yeah, so sorry, David, but the Cambridge United episode was brilliant talking about John Beck. And what we didn't have the opportunity to talk about was the influence of Gary Johnson. And clearly there must have been some influence either in Cambridge or from John Beck into Gary Johnson going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably a bit of both, I would think. And he was obviously in the Watford academy for a while as well. And that's an academy that's produced a decent player or two in its time, hasn't it? So, and you probably don't get a job managing a national team, even if it is only Latvia, unless you got something about you, do you? But again, from speaking to players who played under Gary and also knowing him from that moment, you definitely get the sense that he was probably what is every day to football managers now. But you go back to that period, and it definitely wasn't. I think that first season that he had with him, we won the FA Trophy. Anyone who doesn't know the FA Trophy, the kind of non-league FA Cup, if you like. So all the non-league teams can compete in it. A lot of the players, and it was a big story at the time that he had a psychology coach, a guy called Mark Lader, who followed him around to Bristol City and other places as well, which again, you told a player back in the early 2000s that you're going to be a psychologist. They'd think, no, mate, I'm all right. You know, I don't need one of those. But they tell a story about how before the game was at Villa Park, because it wasn't at Wembley, the FA Trophy then. I think it might have been, would that have been when Wembley was being redone? I can't remember, but it would have been around that time. So we played at Villa Park, and they took all the players out onto the pitch, and they had this whole session in the dressing room at Villa Park with asking them to visualize, what they were going to do in the game, and go through that with this psychologist and a striker we had at the time, a lad called Adam Stansfield, who's sadly no longer with us. We lost him far too soon, but he visualized that he was going to score a goal and he was going to be man of the match. Scores the second goal. He's man of the match. He swears on the interview with Sky Sports straight after, and a legend is born. So it's funny how those things seem every day now, but at the time they were a revolution. And when you speak to players who were part of that team, they will tell you that it was all about that togetherness. And Yeovil's a place, pretty much the middle of nowhere, isn't it? There's not a great deal going on there, and you have a lot of young lads. There's a few. I mean, Gary inherited a decent side with some good players in it, but he brought in some very good players who had basically been told they weren't good enough at other clubs, and put something together which just had that unity about it. And we did a podcast with Lee Johnson, Gary's son, who's obviously gone on to do good things as a manager himself. He's a great midfield player for us. And he said, if that team that got us into the Football League was still about now, it would have been picked off bit by bit. Yeah. It probably wouldn't have even come together because those players would be in an under 21s and under 22s. But fortunately for us, they were, because even 22 years on, we still talk about those teams now. So it was a special time.
It's a really great interview, actually, with Lee Johnson. I'd heartily recommend anyone who wants to do some further reading after this, go and check out that interview with Lee Johnson. It's from January time, isn't it? And because he does talk about one of the other points that you make. Yeovil is a small place, and I think it's a point at which you're talking about, getting the team togetherness. And he was sort of essentially says, well, there wasn't a lot else to do.
No. And I mentioned before about loan players that I brought people with. So we've had loan players lots of Andros Townsend, Stephen Colker, Ryan Mason. We had a good spell with Spurs where they lent us a few decent players, and all gone on to do well for themselves in further careers. We'll talk about another one later, I'm sure, Dan Byrne, who's gone on to do all right, isn't he? So, and I think a lot of it is that Dan Byrne was at Fulham at the time. Get him away from the bright lights, let him play a season in League One as it was then. And it's, focus on your football. That's what you hear about, because there ain't a great deal else to focus on unless you like trees and fields, which are nice in their own way, I suppose.
That FA Trophy run is a fascinating one. And I mean, on the one hand, we're not surprised that Adam Stansfield could visualise scoring a goal in the final, because he was scoring throughout that run. Jamie, you'd pick this out as well. There's a pretty special game, and is that game against Doncaster Rovers the moment or the turning point?
Oh, 100%, yeah. And again, you ask Yeovil fan, what's the best game you've ever been to? That one's going to be right up there. And I remember people walking out at half time because this is rubbish, 4-0 down. And the hilarious thing is it's still available on YouTube. And I'd recommend, if anyone wants a laugh, just listen to the thick South Yorkshire accent of a Doncaster fan who gets more and more upset and irate as the goals start to go in. And 4-0 down, win 5-4. It was absolutely bonkers, as a game.
It definitely feels significant. When I was looking through the FA Trophy run, I've been to a few FA Trophy finals, in the past. I went to watch Barrow versus Leek a long time ago.
I know.
That is impressive.
but the point is, it's a really big occasion for the teams that don't play league football, because unfortunately for this occasion, Yeovil go to Villa Park. I say unfortunately, Villa Park's a fantastic stadium, but you don't get the glory of going to Wembley because that was being rebuilt. But Yeovil do get to go to Wembley at some point, and the new Wembley, which is fantastic.
Winning the trophy in his first full season in charge, wasn't it?
Correct.
And that's brilliant, and that sort of pick up. But then, the goal, and it's a holy grail really for Yeovil, is to get into the league. And this is a sort of a favourite. We've covered this topic before about the dark arts of the football re-election system. But for many years it was a closed shop, and it was extremely difficult for all sorts of non-league teams, including Yeovil, to get promoted, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, by the time we went up, it was 108 years of existence by the time we got out there. And there's plenty of, you look back to the club archives that are all sort of on framed pictures on the walls. There's pictures of people, because Yeovil is kind of famous for making helicopters now. You'll know this, Graham,
Yes,
from
of course. Yes,
in your day job. Leonardo, as they're called now. I always know them as Westland helicopters. So there's pictures of Yeovil players for many years all climbing into helicopters with signs saying "Elect Yeovil Town." But yeah, unfortunately, it was a bit of a like say an old boys club, and the league clubs voted for the league clubs, which it was never gonna last. But several failed attempts in that respect.
Well, I can tell you, David, Yeovil Town, along with Wigan Athletic, hold the most applications to be elected to the Football League. So since 1948 through to 1986, when the election process was finally and rightfully abolished, 26 applications.
Right.
Yeovil
it's a lot
made.
of paper and pen, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, I absolutely applaud the tenacity, because you're right, it was an old boys club. It was very rare that the league teams would vote a league team out. It was generally exceptional circumstances. But I completely applaud Yeovil's tenacity, because they kept going back. And there were so many of those 26 seasons where they were applying for election into the Football League, where they got no votes or one or two votes. It was no one was backing them until the late 1970s, when there did seem to be some backing. And then suddenly the rules were changed, where only 2 teams were allowed to be put forward for election, where previously it could have been as many teams as wanted to apply for league status. I can't think of a football team that deserves their place in the league more than Yeovil when they finally achieved it off their own bat.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the season we did go up in 2002, 2003, I think it was. That was not a non-league team that was playing on that pitch. It was a team that was just, again, so far above its level that you just knew that when we did get there, we were probably going to be all right. And I say that was testament to, it sounds a bit cheesy, doesn't it? But you can't put too much of emphasis on that spirit, because that really was what it was. And good quality players obviously always helps. But there were some moments in that when we did finally make it up were the turning points. Definitely, I can remember going to a game away at Halifax, and it's another Doncaster story. We were 2-0 down away at Halifax Town on a Tuesday night. Came back to win 3-2. I think like March time maybe that year. A player called Kevin Gould, who we'd signed from Bristol Rovers at the time, scored a hat trick in the second half. And I remember Gary John. I was working for the local paper at the time, covering the Northern games, because that's where I was at the time. And I remember him saying this quote that I never quite understood what he meant, but I loved it. He said, at half time, I threw the boys a carrot, and these boys can catch any carrot I throw at them. Everyone's like, I don't know what that even means, but I love it. Yeah. And we talk about turning points. I think that game was the one, and when we've spoken to players since then, they say that was the one where you just knew it was gonna happen. But that season we lost the second game that season. Then we didn't get beaten again until sort of early December, I don't think. So the runs we went on were just phenomenal times to be a football fan.
Yeah, I don't think you lose a game in the second half of the season, do you?
No, I think when I looked at the league table through that season, when you got promotion, Yeovil got promotion, I think you go top towards the end of September and you stay there. Yeah.
And I mean, I say we'd won the trophy the year before that. The year before that, we just missed out to Rushden. So we were building a good a nucleus of a team. But one thing that definitely changed us from being one of those teams that were definitely going to be up there to one that was going to be far ahead of everybody else was the sign. Everyone loves a striker, right? Yeah. And we signed a striker at the time, a guy called Kurt Jackson from Stevenage. I think he went on to get something like 19 in 24 games or something. And then Kevin Gould comes in. I think he got like maybe 12 or 13 in a ridiculous number of games. I see those two up front were the turbo injection in the engine, if you like. But it was a team that was far too good to be playing in the non-league.
And the irony being, of course, the year you go up as champions is the first year 2 teams go up. So having waited all this time, you actually go and do
Finally give us a playoff. Yeah.
So Terry Skiverton, who is obviously a really central, more than just player, manager, coach, personality throughout this period. Now, is he captain at this stage, or is he?
Yeah. So Terry Skiverton's story with Yeovil actually goes back to the late 1990s. But even before David Webb, so that's where it goes back. We signed him from a team called Welling United, and again, he was one of those players that everyone was like, okay, we signed a couple of strikers, and Terry Skiverton signed at the same time. I think the most famous thing that he'd been for was he was an extra in, I forget what it was called now, but it was a TV show, and the team in it was called Harchester United.
Yes.
You remember the one? He was, and he had one line which was to shout, "Just get out there and play." That was it. That's all he did. So he's probably more famous for that. But yeah, he personified. I mean, like you say, he is Mr. Yeovil when you look at his playing career, and not to get too John Terry about it, but he is captain, leader, legend. He is build the statue of that man. Him and Gary Johnson lifting a trophy together. That's what Yeovil Town's glory days, both periods, are all built on those two. They're a consistent factor throughout.
So after 108 years, Yeovil finally make it into the and the moment you arrive, and I think this speaks to the point you were making earlier about they were a good side, probably too good for the conference by that stage, because, and actually we there was a bit of a record of this happening at this time, where teams who went up from the conference did largely seem to settle quite well in League Two, and arguably were already ones heading for the next step, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, we played Rochdale, and we always speak with a supporter of the club we're going to play on the podcast before. And we spoke to a Rochdale fan recently, and he remembered the first game we played in the Football League was away at Rochdale on 2003, 2004. And he told this story, and he said, oh yeah, I remember thinking, the non-league boys, yeah, we'll put them in their place. We beat them 3-1. It could have been 6-7-1, honestly. We played them off the park on a red hot day in August. And I think that kind of introduced us to the Football League as it was at the time. And I mean, that season we finished 8th. I think we missed out on goal difference from going up. So that shows you how good we were for the level that we were going into. And a bit of an FA Cup run that season as well.
Yeah, and interesting, again, I was listening to in that Lee Johnson interview, and Lee Johnson was in the heart of that midfield, and we'll talk about the father-son part, which is a whole fantastic dimension to it. He kept talking about the work rate of that team, and, I think one of the things, when we were watching John Beck's Cambridge United, they were sort of vilified at the time as kicking the ball into the corners, all this sort of stuff. One thing that was really clear about that team was the press of those players was extraordinary. The energy levels, yes, it was a bit fundamental getting into the channels, but actually the press was almost like you'd see with kind of a City or a Liverpool, or Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool bits and pieces. Was that kind of energy part of the sort of the Gary Johnson Yeovil?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Work rate and effort. You'd often hear him, and I think Lee talks about how he always heard his dad shouting, "Get those legs moving," to his players from the side of the pitch. But yeah, I mean, Darren Way and Lee Johnson, who were the middle of our midfield, were absolutely. They've been a nightmare to play against. Absolute nightmare to play against. Everybody had to work for it. Everybody had to run those extra yards to do it. And when you add a bit of quality to that effort and the team spirit that I keep banging on about, that's the difference. But Gary Johnson's team would always, work hard. I think in every successful team he's had, a fan would tell you that, I'm sure.
Was speed, David, speed of players, wingers in particular, was that a feature of the Gary Johnson style of play as well?
Yeah, we've had a few of those quick midfield players and I say quality midfield players as well. In the wide positions. I mean, one player who Yeovil Town fans would pick out is a chap called Gavin Williams, who we refer to as Super Gav. I think we sold him to West Ham actually for $250,000 at the time. He was just a joy to watch. One of those players that I mean, when I was starting out watching football, it was sort of Italianite kind of time. And I always remember Gascoigne always just seemed to have that.
Yeah.
You just never knew what he was going to do, but you always thought it was going to be special. Whereas watching Gavin Williams was like that. It was just poetry, emotion. And other players like Michael McKindo. We had a winger who played for us, a Scottish guy who, a bit of a controversial character, but he could whip a ball in. And the strikers that we had, I mentioned about Kurt Jackson before. He was like a big sort of number 9. It would have been manna from heaven for him playing alongside those balls coming into the box as well. So yes, speed and quality were definitely a big part of what Gary Johnson's sides were all about.
I mean, what's quite interesting in that 04-05 season, the year Gary Johnson gets his second promotion, it's a striker who isn't really necessarily that quick or that tall. Phil Jevons, who really thrives, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, that season, so I said we just missed out on the playoffs, and Phil Jevons was an addition that summer and signed alongside a player who, to what I can tell, may have played one season for Yeovil and never been seen in English football again, a guy called Bartosz Tarachulski.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm glad you said it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he and Jevons were literally the big man, little man combination up front. Bartos was a player who, he was, to look at him, he was a head on a stick, but he was such a good player as well. He's the old Peter Crouch thing about, great touch for a big man and all of that. He was some player, and we said I had Phil Jevons on the podcast, and he talked about the players that he played alongside and how Bartos that season was just a special kind of player. But for my money, watching Yeovil Town, and we've had some good strikers in our time, Phil Jevons is probably the most natural goal scorer I've ever seen us have. And he's the one player that if you ask Yeovil Town fans for, a penalty taker to save their life, they pick Phil Jevons every time. He was sort of I think I only ever saw him miss one in all the time. He had a few penalties in his day, but that season, I think, 29 goals,
29 goals.
Yeah, 29 goals. But like you say, I think the most famous thing he'd done before then is score a goal at Anfield for Grimsby Town, which was, it was a special moment if you're a Grimsby Town fan, I'm sure. But he certainly wasn't a player, but his Gary Johnson's recruitment, he knew what he needed and he recruited in the positions that he needed. And
there is quite a special thing as well with Phil Jevons, because I think Graham picked this up in his research. We're used to being on the terraces and in football stadiums singing songs about our local players, our favourite players, our cult hero players, but not many players have a pop song or a folk song or a rock song made about them. I think Phil Jevons is in a unique band of individuals. Is that right, Graham?
Yeah, I found something from somebody called Pete Green called The Ballad of Phil Jevons, and he's like a Grimsby Town fan. The write-up around it says he didn't score many goals to start with, and then he seemed to lose weight a bit, and then he stopped playing, and then Grimsby stopped playing him partly because they had to pay some extra money if he got to whatever appearances. So in some sense, it says the song's unfair because there's reasons to it. But what I like, I don't know if you ever come across this, but the final two lines I like is, you shrugged your shoulders as the Mariners went down, and then you buggered off to Yeovil Town. Now,
I'm going to get that one on Spotify, I think. It sounds great.
But around this time, Yeovil Town, of course, were making a far more successful music of their own, because this is off the back.
I thought you didn't want to talk about this, Graham. I don't really want to talk about it.
They won't make the edit.
Yes, Yeovil True, wasn't it? In I think it was around an FA Cup run, because we got again to the third round in that same season, and it's still played at the games today, and I die a little bit more inside every time I hear it, if I'm honest with you. But yes, day or night, I'm green and white, whether we're up or down. Yeah, it's got cheese written all over it, but it's sung in an accent more akin to the Wurzels, I think, than pop music. Yeah.
It spent a week in the national pop charts, which is incredible.
Yeah, every person in Yeovil bought 6 copies, I think.
I think it's around this time, and we talked about Lee Johnson, and Lee Johnson scores the most incredible hat trick, doesn't he, against
Plymouth.
In the, I think it's around that season, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's around that time. Yeah, it's one of those moments that you see replayed, and it's like that "what happened next" moment, where a Plymouth player goes off injured, and he, air quotes here, passes the ball back to the goalkeeper, and it goes straight over the goalkeeper and into the net. Cue confusion, and Lee tells the story about how he said he looked at his dad, and it was one of those moments like I left all my toys on the living room floor and I had to run before he gave me a clip round the ear. So he kind of looking to his dad going, what we going to do? And then this bizarre moment where Gary Johnson just lets Plymouth run through and score a goal and equalises. But then there's probably, everyone remembers for that goal, but Lee Johnson scored one of them was an absolute screamer, like 35-yard volley. So that was a bizarre moment, I think. But again, one of those that you'll see on what happened next rounds, I think. I thought, Graham, actually, you were going to ask me to tell you about the result at home to Oxford United that season, wasn't it? I think let me just check my notes.
Yeah.
September.
I don't think so.
Yeovil Town 6, Oxford United 1.
18th of September.
I'm not sure.
18th of September 2004. Yes. Well done, David. That's definitely a scoreline that's worth profiling.
An absolute hammering. 6-1. Phil G. Evans with a hat trick. From an Oxford perspective, that game is most famous for one of only 2 goals scored by the brilliantly named Mark Ebayer. But actually, there are a few kind of connections. Yeovil have a number of players who they don't make much impact on the Yeovil team. I think Simon Weatherston and Yemi Odebedo and David Woosley, I think, comes in towards the end or is in there. But you do have Scott Guyot, who's a centre-back, and actually played quite a few games for us.
Yeah, Australian centre-back, and I think he's gone on to have a decent coaching career since he's retired. I think back in Australia now, but I think it was Crystal Palace. He was on the coaching staff there for a while. So, yeah, he's gone on to do well for himself. He actually probably better known for featuring in a post Gary Johnson memory as a Yeovil Town fan in 2007 when we got into the League One playoff final at the time via a still for me my best moment as a Yeovil Town fan in 2007. And apologies, I'm jumping around here a little bit, but Scott Dyer played in a game, the semi-final of that against Nottingham Forest. The home game was at Yeovil, 2-0 down from to Nottingham Forest, who were a massive club. Apparently, they've won the European Cup a couple of times, but they don't.
They should
don't
talk
like
about
to mention it, but apparently they have. Yeah, I remember turning up at the City Ground, and there's T-shirts, Nottingham Forest, Wembley, 2007, and I remember going past with my Yeovil shirt on, and some bloke who was selling these T-shirts saying to me, "What are you doing here?" And I literally, all I could think to say to him was, "Well, you got to see it through to the end, haven't you?" And so, we won 5-2 in the second leg at Nottingham Forest, and even going into injury or coming towards when the game would come to an end. Whole City Ground absolutely packed, singing "Que Sera, Sera." Marcus Stewart scores a header for us, and takes it to extra time, and we go through and win and go through the Wembley. And I mean, unfortunately, we lost 2-0 in the final at home against Blackpool, because I think that semi-final was our final, if you know what I mean. But that guy was in that team.
Yeah, so that Yeovil 6-1 win against Oxford, I believe, might be your record league win. It's quite frustrating that discovering that fact. A game I had airbrushed out of my my memory. But it goes on to be another a fantastic season, and actually Yeovil. It's not comfortable, but again they do it. They go up as champions, don't they?
Yeah. We go up as champions that season, and I say again, I spoke about Kirk Jackson and Kevin Gould. Phil Jevons and Bartosz Tarachowski are undoubtedly the thing that lifts us through there. And he was the sort of the final piece in the jigsaw. The Grimsby fan who you got the song from probably wouldn't agree with me, but he absolutely was. And yeah, he scores the winner at Southend, who were one. I think they might have gone up through the playoffs that season as well.
Amazing. No, you're up to League One and 2 promotions, but obviously the work that Gary Johnson is doing there is going to start to get noticed, isn't it? And it does get noticed, and Bristol City come calling.
Yeah, a team that were below us in the division at the time that he went.
You are kidding.
So
That's
yeah,
true.
I think they were in the relegation places in League One.
One off the bottom. Yeah,
that's right at the time. So, but I mean, Yeovil, obviously, Bristol is not that far away. So I don't think there's any Yeovil fan, even with the most green tinted spectacles, who would say that Bristol City weren't a bigger club than Yeovil Town. So it was one of those strange moments where I remember reading about it, hearing that it happened, and it was like the end of an era. It was like, the Beatles breaking up or something like that. I remember where I was when I was when I read the news, but also it was one of those that you thought, well, he's got us beyond where we could have imagined being. He won a silverware in his first season, got us promoted to the Football League, and then got us into League One. I mean, you can't ask any more of a player like that. And Yeovil Town is not one of those clubs or those fan bases who's going to say, no, you should show some loyalty to Yeovil Town because we're Yeovil Town. So I think everybody understood. I mean, literally did, break up the band in the end with taking a load of players with him up the road to Bristol. But yeah, sometimes you just have to say, well, good luck to you, and hope he goes on and does well there.
Yeah, very much so. So it seems as though the story ends with Gary Johnson leaving. But in the second half, we will see how the story returns.
Hey, Graham, I'm just off to get my halftime bovril and pie. I heard we're growing. We're expanding. Like the universe, we're expanding. What else is happening? We've got so much going on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got to point you in the direction of the new, by far, the greatest team newsletter.
Wow, a newsletter. What could be news? Tell me more, Graham.
We're coming at you every week with a free, I should stress, free newsletter, where we're going to go take a deep dive into one of the teams that we talk about on the podcast. Some weeks will be the team that we're doing this week. The weeks it will be one from the past, to be whichever random team we want to talk about. And we're going to try and use this to knit together one or two of the common themes that keep cropping up in this podcast.
Wow, and there are so many common themes as well. Next, we'll be making YouTube videos or something crazy like that, Graham.
Absolutely. So you can see us in visual splendor. Yes, so keep an eye out on YouTube and on YouTube Shorts, because we're going to be putting together a whole series of clips, mini clips and bits and pieces from our podcast over the 3 seasons we've done so far. We thought a nice little way to pick out some of the more entertaining bits that we've covered over this period. How can people find that?
So we are on X still for the moment. That changed. I believe you are said and done, Dunn. I am Couch Pundito. We're also on Blue Sky, and we are in the process of polishing up a shiny new website, which will have this content and links to this amazing newsletter. By far, the greatest team is growing, and a new shiny website, is not so far away.
So, plenty to tuck into. Now, I think we might have finished our bovril. I've finished my pie. It's on for the second half.
Enjoy the second half, Graham. I can't wait.
Excellent. Welcome back. So, we left Yeovil maybe worrying about their future as a League One side. With Gary Johnson gone, first of all, it's Russell Slade who comes in, and then club legend Terry Skibberton comes in with intriguing assistant manager, I think.
Yeah, Nathan Jones, who'd been a consistent left back for us that game against Nottingham Forest in 2007. Nathan Jones was a big part of that, and yeah, I think Skivo's reputation as a club legend is probably what gets him. Obviously, history tells us that maybe Nathan Jones was a decent coach in his own right, but yeah, he cut his teeth with Yeovil Town in the coaching game as well. So yeah, an interesting one.
Would it be fair to say during that period they're a little bit up and down without actually going either up or down?
Yeah. I think League One is a level that when you look at some of the teams that were in that level, I mean, we played Leeds, we played Sheffield United, Sheffield Wednesday, Nottingham Forest, as I've mentioned. So just to be at the same level as these teams that, as a kid, I was watching on Match of the Day in the Premier League, it's was quite a remarkable moment. So we were just all very happy to be there, and we had some great seasons where a lot of loan players that came in. I'd mentioned the few from Tottenham Hotspur as well, but probably reel off half a dozen others who at that time were there. And yeah, Skivo always had this knack of keeping us at that level, and it's probably not until the more recent times that we've realised just how special that was and just how much of an achievement that was. But yeah, you don't know what you've got till it's gone sometimes, do you?
Well, this is all happening. Jeremy, Gary Johnson is having success at Bristol City, I guess?
Yeah, David mentioned he goes off to Bristol City and takes a few players, or there's some links between players that have played for the two clubs as well. And Johnson just goes on and carries on doing the great stuff he's been doing at Yeovil Town. David mentioned Bristol City are below Yeovil in League One, where he takes over. They're in the relegation spots. He gets them to finish, I think, 8th or 9th. And then the following year, he gets them promoted by right, not via a playoff. And then they come within a playoff final of making the Premier League, which would have been an incredible achievement. And I have a Bristol City fan, and David's already mentioned it in terms of how Gary Johnson means to Yeovil Town. It's the same with Bristol City. Bristol City hold Gary Johnson in incredible fondness because what he did for that football team and the style of play, everything that David's talked us through in terms of what he was doing for Yeovil, he seems to continue his work with Bristol City. But obviously that doesn't continue. His fortunes change and opportunity, I guess, presents itself further down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of less storied spells at Northampton or Peterborough and then Northampton. And then I guess it's kind of the perfect marriage, the opportunity for Gary Johnson to return to Yeovil. Was that, I mean, I know with Oxford, it was kind of, I spent years and years waiting for Jim Smith to come back, and eventually he did. By the time he came back, we were virtually relegated, and our greatest ever manager takes us into the conference and then has to work try and get us out of this. This isn't what the story was meant to be. But did Johnson's return, did it just immediately look as though, everything's right in the world again?
I wouldn't quite say everything's right again in the world, but it certainly galvanised that team. I think we were in the relegation spots when he came in. I actually remember being at his first game, which was a 4-0 defeat at Sheffield United, and you could almost just see him stood at the side of the pitch looking at some of the players and just going, what have I done here? What have I come into? But it was a strange one because, as you say, Bristol City, great success there. But then his stock had fallen quite considerably. Yeah. I mean, Peterborough and Northampton fans, if you ask them about Gary Johnson, they're probably more likely to swear than hug you. So he'd probably fallen a bit in his reputation. But there was, and history tells us, there was something about Yeovil Town and Gary Johnson that just went together. And he comes in. Brought in, again, a few good loan players. One in particular he got from Bristol City, Joe Edwards, who's obviously went on to be a bit of a Plymouth Argyle legend now, isn't he? And I think that season, when I look at the records, you get 10 wins in that period, that second half. And we actually stay up quite comfortably. When he took over from Skivo, we looked like we were down and out. And it's interesting, and it probably tells you everything you need to know about Terry Skivo and he stepped aside and became assistant manager at the time. But the two of them sort of bonded by their past as his captain. He knew that he didn't want anybody else there on the coaching staff. And yeah, that's the way it turned out to be. And then he brings back Darren Way as well, who was obviously a midfielder alongside Lee Johnson in that time on the coaching staff as well. So, yeah, it was the glory days of the past meet the present. And you just thought at that time, well, it couldn't happen again, could it?
It is interesting. It's a marked difference. I looked at where Yeovil were when Johnson comes back and replaces Skiverton when Skiverton does become his assistant. 24 games, they're in 21st position in League One, then relegation zone. They've got a win ratio of 16.6%. In the next 22 games, they finish with a win ratio of 50% in terms of what Gary Johnson does. So it's incredible how he just changes the fortunes. They go from 0.87 goals a game to 1.67 goals a game. You know, that's guaranteeing a goal a game more than what they were doing pre-Johnson returning back to Yeovil. And I don't think it's a slur on what Skiverton was doing, because you've already mentioned, David, he was keeping Yeovil in League One on a consistent basis. I think what it helped was that you've got this guy in Johnson who just has that different level. And as a team, it just felt from complete outsider looking in, that partnership just seemed to work. It was almost like the history of where Yeovil have been, the recent history with Johnson coming in and supplemented, was enough to get them elevated. And as we know, that continues.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you speak to players from that time, they'll tell you that Terry Skiverton commanded the respect of everybody because of what he'd achieved at the club, and literally, build a statue of the man in the town, because even now you ask people who their favourite player was, they'll tell you Terry Skiverton, and he had that aura about him. And when Gary Johnson came back, he had that aura about him as well. In his second season, he shrewd in the transfer market again, picks up some players that no one's probably ever heard of. We had a goalkeeper called Marek Steck, who was just outstanding that season. Jamie McAllister, who played around in the Football League, been at Bristol City actually under Gary. I think he was at Preston at the time. We had Luke Ayling. He's not done bad for himself as a young player, and then a few others. Sam Foley still kicking around the lower leagues now, and later on in that season, sign a young lad from Fulham called Dan Byrne, who's gone on to do all right for himself. And we had another special finisher that season as well.
Do you know what's remarkable that I find, looking at the way that Johnson and Yeovil Town are operating in the transfer window? None of those players you've listed, unless my notes tell me incorrectly, cost a penny. Yeah. They were all free transfers. So it'd be unfair to say he's working, looking at the bottom end of the market, but he has to be very selective about which players he thinks can come in and play in a Gary Johnson system in this Yeovil Town team, and without having to spend any money.
You can do it once and it can be a fluke. When you do it several times, a club like Yeovil bringing in players that are basically on their way up or on their way down, then it's not luck twice, is it?
The season's going okay, but it's not caught fire or anything. But it seems the catalyst or the turning point maybe is the arrival of Paddy Madden. And Paddy Madden is I find a fascinating player, because I would say Oxford have played against Paddy Madden for about 50. He always scored against them for about 15. I was staggered to find out he's still only 35. For me, he's been doing this for the last 30 years.
Yeah, Paddy was a stranger, and like you say, I think we'd lost 6 games in a row when he arrived. So looking back at the stats, he arrives in the October of that season. Again, it's another one of those. Paddy who, he's on loan from Carlisle United, who clearly don't want him. And everyone's like, who is this guy? He's not gonna do anything. We just lost 6 games. Why are we signing him? First game he plays, 3-1 home win against Colchester, and he scores twice. And you think, oh, hang on a minute, maybe he's got something about him. And I talk about Phil Jevons being probably the most natural finisher I've ever seen. That season, I wouldn't say Paddy Madden matched him, but he came as close as I've ever seen anybody do. He was just such a instinctive finisher that was always in the rubber. And again, in true Gary Johnson style, he was one of those who he had the work rate. He would just run and run and run. And he must have been a nightmare to play against.
Exactly as you say, he's so irritating a player, because he's buzzing around everywhere, and there's a lot, he's got some physicality to him. He must be just a nightmare to play against.
Yeah, when you see Paddy Madden's work rate and finishing ability, yeah, it was pretty special. And I think would have been I want to say it was January, maybe December, January, talked about Johnson's first game being away at Sheffield United. We won 2-0 at Sheffield United and Madden scored twice. And this was Sheffield United. Again, yeah, it's a massive club to be playing at that level. And I think that was the game where we thought, hang on a minute, this could catch fire again now. And because I think that season we started as favourites to go down. Nobody gave us a chance of ever getting anywhere near to promotion. But it's the Gary Johnson magic again.
Well, Yeovil Town being in the Championship is an unlikely thing. And Jamie, I think you've done a sort of one of your population or demographic kind of stats about it.
Yeah, well, to quote David, a club like Yeovil to be in the Championship is extraordinary. It really is. I mean, David, correct me if I've got my numbers wrong, but Yeovil is around about 48,000 people. It's a pretty small town in comparison to some of the Football League clubs where they're in excess of 80, 100, 200,000 in some of the big cities. I mean, to kind of give you a context, Rotherham and Barnsley have populations around 72,000. They have spent time in the Championship, but I'm hoping I'm not offending too many Rotherham fans, but they go up, they go down, they go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. So, with a population of 70,000, it's really hard to sustain a run in the Championship. For Yeovil to get into the Championship, the second tier of the English Football League, it's incredible. It really is. It's punching way above the weight a team of that stature should be doing. And David, I hope you take that in the right spirit, and I mean that in a complimentary way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. But there is a moment, and again, you remember these little quotes that Gary said, and we used to have a banner, and it just said "Little Old Yeovil" because that's what we were. Everyone called us, "Oh, Little Old Yeovil." They did well in the FA Cup one year, and he said it was around the time after the sort of the good run. And we were maybe starting to wobble a little bit. And it was like, are we going to get in the playoffs? And are we not? He did a press conference. He said, I want the players to feel like they failed if they don't get in the playoffs, because that's what will drive us on to be what we were. And when you think about it, you say you're playing Sheffield United. I mean, I don't know what the population of Sheffield is, but it's just ridiculous that Yeovil Town should be competing against these kind of teams. And you're thinking, this manager's saying we failed if we don't finish above all of these teams. But that was, again, the psychology that not just with the players, but with the club and everything like that. He wanted us to not be little old Yeovil anymore. He wanted us to stand on our own 2 feet and be what we were, which was, yes, a club punching well above its weight, but thoroughly deserving where we were as well. And again, it worked, didn't it? Whatever he did, it worked. So.
Lee Johnson makes a surprise appearance in that season as well, because don't Yeovil play Oldham, in which I think is managed by Lee Johnson at the time? So I can't imagine if this has ever happened before, where you've had father-son managing the two opposition players. I don't know if the Fergusons, whether they ever played each other.
Yeah, maybe. No, I can't think of another example. Like you say, yeah. Sir Alex, that might be one to do the research on, I think. But, no, you're right. Yeah, I don't think Oldham is one of Lee's finer moments as a football manager, but even their own fans would tell you it's a bit of a basket case of the club at that point. But yeah, it's certainly a strange one. Must have been a very strange one for Lee to look across and see his dad. I wonder what Sunday dinner was like. I don't even know the result of that game. I can't remember what the result was.
I think Oldham win. I think Oldham won that one.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Well. Yeah.
One of the other players we've not talked about, and I particularly want to talk about him because of a claim to fame not related to Yeovil. We had James Hayter playing up front, who has an extraordinary hat-trick record, doesn't he, Jamie?
Graham knows this already because he's talked about James Hayter on these things previously. He always played for Bournemouth. Yeah, in 2 minutes and 21 seconds, he scored what has become and still is the record of the fastest hat-trick in Football League football. Not the fastest hat-trick ever. There have been faster in other leagues. But it kind of prompts me because I knew this was coming. So I'd be surprised if you guys know the answer to this question, but you could possibly guess the circumstances. Do you know what the longest ever hat trick in a single football match is?
Okay, longest. So it has to be extra time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
First minute.
There'll be extra time or some kind of like fog or something like that, and they're waiting for it to clear or something. Is it that?
Or how about a game gets held up for some reason? They come back and play it kind of 2 days later. There are games like that. Is it something like that?
You're both absolutely in the right ballpark. It's a game that started, and a player called Adi Sayed, who was playing in the Brunei League for a football team called Kasuka. It's a professional game. He's already scored 2 goals where torrential rain absolutely comes down. That's on the 2nd of July. They finished the game on the 2nd of August. So 31 days later, almost 45,000 minutes later, they replay the rest of the game. Adi Sayed scores a penalty and becomes the statistic of the longest ever hat trick. So I know Graham was going to come in with the James Hayter thing. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about the fast hat tricks. I want to talk about the slow hat tricks.
Well, I want you to find a fan of one of those clubs from Brunei or whatever. I want to hear a greatest team of, I can't even remember how you pronounce it, but yeah.
So that playoff final against Brentford. Oh, now, Yeovil had been to Wembley in a playoff final before. It's not gone their way. But once again, Brentford, decent side at the time. And Yeovil bring, I think, 18,000 supporters to that, which by my reckoning is about 2/3 of Yeovil. Come to that.
Good day to be a burglar in Yeovil that day, I think. Yeah. Yeah, it was another one of those, and the first Wembley final in 2007 was the same. We've probably all been to them where you turn up and it's not just someone you've never seen at a game before, but it's their mum, dad, uncle, auntie, and everybody just seemed to be there. Like everybody you knew was at the ground, and we still had bad memories of 2007 of losing to Blackpool in the pouring rain, and this was very different because it was a red hot day at Wembley. So went into it with a little bit of trepidation, but also knowing Gary Johnson's in the dugout. These boys have just done Sheffield United in the final. I mean, like you say, Brentford were a very good side that season. But I think we went in with confidence. We were undoubtedly the underdogs again, but we were quite used to being underdogs. So we went into it and just thought, well, let's see what happens. And then after 6 minutes, that man, Paddy Madden, pops up with, I still say, the best goal ever scored at Wembley. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. Let's move on. And after 6 minutes, we're 1-0 up. And then just before half time, Dan Burn, who's taller than I think everybody on the planet, rises to head one home. Although James Hayter might disagree with you because he still says that he got a touch of the back post. Typical striker, right?
Yeah.
And we are 2-0 up at half time at Wembley, 45 minutes away from being in the second tier of English football. Now, when I started supporting Yeovil in the early 90s, if you told me that, I'd have literally got the men in white coats to come and take you away because that just absolutely bananas. But the second half of that game is probably the most back to the wall moment that 45 minutes that I've ever seen. Brentford score relatively early in that second half, as I remember, and then we defend for our absolute lives. And it's a moment, it might even be an injury time where Gavin Williams, who I mentioned, Super Gav, so he's back with us at that point, and he's a substitute, doesn't even get on the pitch, and the balls rolls off the pitch. Brentford players running up to get it, and he boots it into the stand like that. Not even on the pitch, gets booked for it. So he's remembered fondly for delaying a few moments and taking one for the team there. And we win 2-1. And I've got a photograph that my friend took on the day of me, just stood there, hands on my head, and literally my face just says, I cannot believe what's just happened. It's like this doesn't happen to supporters of Yeovil Town. So playing in the Championship, if you're a fan of Nottingham Forest or Sheffield Wednesday or whatever, is probably an insult to you. But Yeovil Town being in the Championship is bananas. Dreams are made of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it is an incredible story to have got there. The Championship season, I mean, Yeovil only survived 1 year. Is there any point where the dream feels like it could keep going, or how did it fare there?
I'd love to tell you that there was. I think maybe the opening day we won 1-0 away at Millwall. Maybe then I probably felt optimistic, but no. I think if you look at the result, there were moments in there, and again, at the risk of sounding cliched, I think every Yeovil fan who lived through that season would be grateful to see Yeovil Town play at some of the places that we played. Leicester City, Derby County, again, Forest and Sheffield Wednesday, we've played all them before. So they're just Leeds, we played them when they were before they were massive as well. But yeah, there was some special moments in there that still stick with us today. We're 3-0 win away at Watford, which is one that sticks in the memory. And then there was a 1-1 draw away at Leicester City. Now, if you look at the results, they'll tell you Chris Wood scored in something like the 92nd minute. But I still say to this day, Kasper Schmeichel scored that goal, because that's how desperate Leicester City, obviously went on to be Premier League champions, were to beat Yeovil Town, that they were sending their keeper up in the last minute to try and we got a point that night. But it was probably never going to be, because Yeovil Town in the Championship is barking enough as it is. And I know we're going to come on to talk about legacies and what the legacy was, but there was an interview with our chairman at the time who basically said that he was sat there at Wembley thinking, oh God, what have we done? Because he knew that they were never going to be able to cope at that level, because it was, to all intents and purposes, a non-league team that had just done remarkable things to just survive in the Football League. League One, we were saying about, was just remarkable in itself, but to get to that level, and again, testament to the genius of Gary Johnson that got us there. But it was always a non-league club in the way that it ran off the pitch. And I think for that reason, it was never realistic that we were going to stay up. I mean, we weren't embarrassing. We weren't, sort of Derby County lowest points total in the Premier League. Not that kind of embarrassing. We held our own and we won a few. So yeah, there were some special moments. And I think that's what being a football fan is about those moments. And, you can never take that away from us.
The relegation then, and it sort of kind of takes the wind out of Yeovil's sails a bit, and maybe a bit out of Gary Johnson's sails.
Yeah, I think so. And the story that comes after is one that I really don't want to go into. Because, we go, 2013 in the Football League, 2023, 10 years later, and we're kicking around in regional football. So I can't imagine there's a bigger fall from grace. I think Stockport may have had a similar kind of fall, and I think they spent longer in regional football than we did. But you're right, with Gary, he did his best, I think, in the Championship, and then in the season that followed, we basically bombed straight through League One into League Two, and there's the moment where he goes, and again another Gary Johnson quote from a press conference, but he says afterwards that he literally looked in his hat for another rabbit that he could pull out of it, and there just wasn't one there. And I think the point that I made before about the chairman saying he wondered, oh God, what have we done, when he sat there at Wembley?
Yeah.
There was never a thought to, right, we're in the Championship, how do we build in this? And, vision's 2020 with hindsight, isn't it? But you think then at the time that that was the moment for the current owners to sell the club to someone, because you're selling them an asset which is in the Championship, which is a real saleable asset. But to his credit, John Fry, who was the chairman at the time, wanted to put right the wrong, and he wanted good things for the football club. But the football club, as a club, never really moved on beyond being a sort of a lower football league, non-league team off the pitch. And Yeovil Town is an organisation that exists on the good spirit of it's a real community club, and the volunteers and the people that put their time in to do it is just it's phenomenal, and never going to have a lot of money playing where they are, but I don't think the kind of planning was in place there, and that's proven by we stabilised in League Two for a little while after falling straight through League One, but yeah, it's a pretty sorry story after that. So this is why I'm trying to put off talking about legacies. I know you're going to finish off with legacy. I don't want to talk about the legacies.
Gary Johnson goes on to Cheltenham, doesn't he? And he has a spell at Cheltenham move. He arrives, I think they're already virtually relegated. Slip out of the league. He gets them promoted at the first time, but brings them back in. And it's an interesting thing about Gary Johnson's career as a manager, where you look at the clubs he's had success at: Yeovil, Cheltenham, Bristol City. This like this southwest triangle.
Torquay United promoted more recently as well. So yeah, it's something about him and the West Country Triangle, isn't it? Yeah.
he then move on from there. So we should get to ranking this team. As a reminder, we have 5 categories of greatness, from all-time greats to the top, true greats, to touch of greatness, our middle category, edge of greatness, blink of greats, and our slightly random category, not necessarily great, but without them, we wouldn't be where we are today. As everyone can put Jamie in the spotlight first, what do you reckon on this team?
Yeah, I've been worried about this all day, and
I'm not going to judge you, Jamie. Don't worry.
But yeah, I feel we're friends now, David, and so I've warmed to you, and I've warmed to Yeovil Town more than. I mean, I was never cold on Yeovil Town at the beginning, but now having this detail, I mean, what's incredible, I don't think we've mentioned it, that I think Yeovil Town have had in the top 5 divisions, the 4 league divisions and the Conference League, they've had 3 promotions, and Gary Johnson responsible for all of them, which is an incredible stat. And I think this is a story about Yeovil Town and Gary Johnson. I looked at some of the other teams that we've put into brackets. So my apologies, David. I kind of top 2. I haven't really considered all-time greats and true greats. With the World Cup winners.
That is my heart breaking.
It's not too late. We can change this. We can change the shape of this. In touch of greatness, we've got teams like Sunderland and Portsmouth who have won an FA Cup. We've also got Argentina who won a World Cup. And then in the blinkered, I looked, and then we've got Harlow Town just on a cup run to the 4th round, Southampton who finished 7th in the top league, and Calais Racing Club, a non-league team that got to the final of the French Cup. And then I started gravitating towards edge, where Cambridge United are. And the reason I'm bringing Cambridge United into this, because it was a story about Cambridge United and John Beck doing an incredible job. And what Gary Johnson's done, he's not just changed Yeovil's mindset, he's changed the fans' mindset. And David has already given us a flavour of that in terms of the journey that these Yeovil Town fans have been on. So the things that David and his friends at Yeovil would have been dreaming about, Gary Johnson turned that into a reality. Which was just something incredible. And to do it, and again, to quote you, sorry, David, a club like Yeovil, less than 50,000 to play in the Championship is incredible. So I feel guilty starting us off in the 4th bracket, edge of greatness, but I have got the door open for touch of greatness, and the door behind me in blinkered greatness has got a lock on, and I'm not opening it.
I was going to say, I can very easily end this call if we get to the lower levels. Yeah. I've suffered enough over the last 10 or 12 years. I don't need to suffer anymore.
Go on, David. Well, what would you reckon to this side?
Well, I mean, I've said it on numerous occasions during this chat. Being a football fan is all about moments, isn't it? And why I love talking about Yeovil Town years gone by, because there's just so many great moments, and I am genuinely privileged to have been there for a lot of them, because I know we speak to a lot of football fans, and not every football fan has those moments that you can do. So forever grateful, but understanding the scoring system. I'm going to go touch of greatness, but I'm biased. So if I'm only going in your 3rd tier, I don't think that's too biased. So I'm going to go touch of greatness, but Graham, you can have the casting vote.
I think that's very reasonable of you there. I think they are. There is no doubt for me. I mean, I was worried Jamie would put you in blinker greats. I know what he's like. He's cruel like that.
That's why I've been worrying. Just
The 3 promotions from Gary Johnson is just an incredible achievement. I think what would have got it to to touch of greats would have been if they could have survived that season in the Championship. I think the 1 year fact probably. I'm a cruel man, but I think we have to put them into Yeovil Town, edge of greatness.
I'll take it. I'll absolutely take it. Yeah.
you're in good company there, David. Ghana 2010 World Cup quarterfinals are in that.
Well, there you go. Yeah. What more can I ask? I'm going to have to go back and listen to that episode. That sounds like a good one.
There's one more thing I was just going to mention. Again, it's what I got from my friend who's a Bristol City fan. And it really kind of encapsulates the brilliance of football fans as well. So I don't know if this happened at Yeovil, but apparently Gary Johnson, when he was watching games, used to be quite a nervous man and be bouncing around and moving a lot. And to the point where the Bristol City fans adopted this, so they would bounce around with Gary Johnson. He was bouncing.
Bounce around the ground. They used to sing it, didn't they?
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, well, we had a chant which was and this probably dates it horribly, but you remember DJ Oxy, hey, baby, I wanna, that was always the hey, Gary Johnson, I want to know, do you love the town? That was it. And he actually came back as Bristol City manager the season that they got promoted as champions out of our League One, and we beat them at our place. And we milked that for every moment it was. And Gary Johnson is forever a hero at Yeovil Town. But even he had a wry smile about that one, I think. Not for long before he go and shout at his own players, but yeah.
And I have to just do once again. I'll give a little plug for the Gloverscast, and I can't recommend enough if you have enjoyed this pod, giving one or two of those Glovers past. I like that as well. Pods a listen. Because what really comes across there, and we talked about it a bit, not just the spirit, but actually, I think the players seem to have really enjoyed their time at Yeovil.
Yeah. It's one of those places that, it is a small town on the road to nowhere. And other than the football team and probably being somewhere near Glastonbury Festival, whenever I say to people I'm from Yeovil, they might be two things that they remember. But it is a place where there are good people there, and I think your local football team, and we're not, there'll be football teams up and down the country, especially in the lower leagues, where you have good people who do something for no thanks or money or anything like that. They just do it for the love of the football club. And you listen to some of those players talk about how people gave up their homes so that these loan players, when they moved down, while they were still looking for a house or a flat, they'd have them in their homes and they do it. And nobody, the club sort of gave them a couple of quid to look after these players. But there's giving someone a room and then giving someone a home. And you hear some of those players talk about how special it felt to be sort of welcomed into that community.
David, that has been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on and telling us the story. It's been brilliant.
A pleasure. Thanks for letting me on.
Yeah, just extending the thanks again, David. That's been wonderful. I've really, really enjoyed the storytelling, and just feeling how you feel about Yeovil makes me feel good. So thank you for that personally.
My pleasure.
And we will be back next week with the incredible story of Dukla Prague.